Welcome to Discovering. We've been following the progress of the George Putman custom hand-forged UP hunting knife from the beginning. Tonight we'll get a look at the finished knife and finish it off with a handmade sheath. And we'll get the 2015 deer season summary. That's all tonight, so sit back, put your feet up. It's Monday night and time for Discovering.
The secret streams that flow beneath the cliffs of colored stone. Forest thick and healthy with birch and pine and oak. Surrounded by the greatest lakes this world has ever known. The black bear's awesome presence as he roams the hills and fields. The call of the timber wolf, the loon's lonesome trill. The eagle soaring high above, the trout lies deep and still. These are what I treasure, the only way I measure feelings that I have for this fine land. There is so much to discover when you're a long-time lover of northern Michigan.
Most of the 2015 deer season is now behind us. I talked with DNR Wildlife Biologist Dave Jentoft to get a preliminary summary on how the season went.
Well, it was a challenging season for hunters this year, of course, with lower deer population this year than we've seen in a while. Certainly our check station activity was down from prior years, down a little bit from last year, as anticipated. Preliminary indications are that our check station activity was down around 13 or 14% from last year, and of course this is down quite a bit from the past 10-year average. Again, everything's preliminary. We're still working on the results for this year, and of course the seasons are still going on at this point, so it'll be a little while before we have final information out there. Our check stations did see some older bucks, particularly 3.5 and 4.5-year-old bucks coming in. It's not that we saw more, but we had more of those older bucks coming in by proportion than some of the younger bucks. And part of the reason for that is because we had some low fawn production years, so those younger age classes, there just weren't as many of those bucks out there this year. Bucks appeared to have good body condition to them. Antler development was probably average to below average, and that kind of relates back to the winters that we've been having. So, you know, what we heard from hunters was generally they were seeing not a lot of deer out there as we expected, not very many bucks, of course. I think that most hunters expected what they saw, or at least it wasn't a surprise to them to see, you know, fewer deer and fewer bucks out there. But, you know, hunters generally commented on the deer being in good condition that they did see. So, you know, that's a good thing. So we're seeing lower population levels right now, and of course this is related to the past 3 winters that we've had that have been harsh on the deer herd. So far this, you know, leading into this winter, we've had mild conditions, of course, warm temperatures, really no snow on the ground, so the deer are getting a good start into this winter. We hope that that continues. It will help the deer herd to pull through the winter. Of course, it's predicted to be a mild winter, and we certainly hope that that's the case. But, you know, it's early in the winter at this point. We're just going into it, and so we'll really have to see what this winter has in store and how that affects the deer herd.
An immense amount of hammering, grinding, sanding, filing, polishing, and buffing has transformed this common ordinary cultivator tooth into this remarkable and functional work of art.
So the last time we were talking about this knife, it was all in pieces. And we had the blade, we had the hilt, we had the spacers, and we had the piece of whitetail antler. Well, we finally put it all together, cleaned up the handle and all that, and then we scrimshaw at the end too. with a little buck's head on it. That's in case when we're hunting, we forget what they look like. We can look at that end there. The spacer is spalded beech. We were using a man-made material the last time we were talking about the spacer, and I thought maybe it'd be more appropriate to have a piece of wood with the antler. And it pretty much came from the same area where the antler came from. And it's been stabilized. What do you mean by being stabilized? I sent it down to Wood Lab downstate in a vacuum chamber. He pulls many inches of vacuum, and he inserts a resin that's much like liquid plexiglass. And it goes right through the whole piece of wood, so it's basically plastic wood. Stuff will last forever. Being that it's spalded, if I didn't do that, it wouldn't hold up. The wood would be kind of crumbly. It's not sharpened yet, and I got to do the final polishing yet. There's still some little fine scratches in there. After the sheath is made, then I'll sharpen it. I usually don't sharpen until after the sheath's made because I'm handling it a lot, and I might run a chance of maybe getting cut. That's talk from experience. Yeah, next step now is making a sheath. We cut out a piece of leather the size we need, soaked it in water, softened it up. And then after it was in the water for about 20 minutes, I took it out and I put the knife in there. And then I just hand formed it around the knife. So, and then after, then I take the knife out, of course, and wipe the knife blade off real well, the whole knife. Then you just let it set it for usually overnight. And then I usually do this in the evening, and then the next morning I can start working on the sheath. And right now, we got this blank here for the sheath. The next step now will be putting the belt loop on there, and then I'll go ahead and show you how we do that. This is glue by Tandy. Tandy Leather sells this glue. Works real well. I'll straighten up the edge on that after it sets up a little bit. This stuff dries clear. It takes about 10 minutes for it to set up good. Usually want this to come out about the same height as what the end of the knife will be. Now the next step will be putting a rivet in there. All this is an old bolt that I took and made a rivet set out of for it. You can see how many sheets I made. I just started that a little better than a year ago. I don't make sheets just for the knives I make, but I've done other sheets for people for knives they had. And the next step will be to map out the blade. Make sure you get the knife in there as best you can. You try to keep this knife here especially as sharp as you can get it, so you can do it almost one cut. So now we got the start. So the next step will be to mark it out for tooling. What you do is you saturate the leather pretty much with it. When you get this far on, as far as the tooling part of it goes, make sure you don't go hitting it with your thumbnail or whatever, because I could really make a mark in there big time with just a fingernail. What it does is it softens the leather up for tooling. You can do the same thing with water, but this stuff seems to last longer. The pair of dividers I took and I made one leg longer than the other, and that'll be a guide here for this part here. I gotta make sure that it's wide enough. Called a swivel knife. It works out very well. It works very well for a lot of different things. So that's going to be my border. That's my logo. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go around the border with this little tool here. A lot of people, they use a hammer made from rawhide. I know I always had good luck with this little hard rubber hammer. This year I've done this before, this type of design. The last couple sheets I made were like this. Now I'll fill in the center part. The next step now will be to cut our piece that goes in between the two here. When we finally put it together, it'll be sandwiched in there like this, so that when you put the knife in there, you won't be cutting into the stitching, you'll be cutting into that leather instead. Try not to get any anus glue on any of the leather that you want to dye too, because it makes it rough. I suppose some people got different ways of doing this than the way I'm doing it, but whatever works for a person. Put a little piece of buckskin inside glued them inside the jaws here so it don't mar the leather when I clamp it together. We'll leave this set now for a half hour. Now we got it glued together here, and so now what I'm gonna do is finish trimming it. There, so now what we're gonna do is we'll go out and sand it down. What I'm gonna do is change the wheels on here and put a wooden wheel on with a leather. I'll take and do the edge, burnish the edge on that. And what it does is it makes the edge real hard. Now we'll go back in the house and trim this. Trim that little edge off of there. There, so now we got the edges nice and rounded. Now we'll take and mark it off for the stitching. Next step is take this little wheel. Got all these little cutters on the end. And then what we'll do is we'll try to follow that the best we can, that groove. What I do is I take a pin and take and mark them real good so then I can see them good. Probably wouldn't have to do this, but it helps. What I do is I drill a hole. Back. I'll take the length of it, 6 lengths of it, and that usually gives me enough thread to get to the end when I'm done sewing. Now, a lot of them, I've seen it done where they'll take and separate the thread once they get it through the needle. Then they'll run this back through, and then why I don't like doing that is because the thread's awful long. A lot of times I'll have to take and pull a lot more thread through here. Your wingspan is only so long, and you run into a problem, especially if you're making a long sheath. Do a double stitch here. What we're gonna do is bring it up, get it even. Then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna double this here up on the end. And what I like doing this here is you can tell it's hand stitched because a machine won't do this. It's a thread that I get from Tanny Leather. It's about 30 pounds test, and I think it's rated more than that because I pull on this quite hard sometimes, and I never ever had a break. And it's all waxed. This here is just a clamp. I designed it years ago and built it. It's got all the parts cut out and put together. And then I stole an idea from my grandpa. He made a table and he used wooden leaf springs. And so I did the same thing here. I got made out of oak. I've been using this thing for I don't know how many years now. And them springs, they still have their tension on them yet. Sometimes I have problems with pulling on these needles, being that it's waxed and the wax gets on the needle and you can't hardly hang on to them because the grease effect that it waxes. But as time goes on, I don't know, it just seems like your fingers get stronger, I guess. This is a double stitch, so what I mean by double stitch is that one of the stitches could get cut and you still have the other stitch to hold yet. A machine stitch don't have that. Okay, what I'm doing now is I got to the end, so now I'm going to take and double back on the stitching, and then what that'll do is lock it so it won't come apart. Being that both of them are at the end, you got to do something to kind of, they won't unravel on the end. There, that's it. Got all taken. Cut those threads off. For all practical purposes, the sheath is done. Now see how good we are. There. Nice and tight, won't fall out. Comes out easy, goes in easy. Now we gotta do is dye it. This here leather dye is from Tandy too. It's mahogany. Here, now we'll leave it dry for a little while. Okay, now I'm going to put a little bit of neat's foil on here. It just kind of softens the leather a little bit. They help get the dye a little more even too. Now I've got one more step yet. Let's put the final sealer on it. This here's a sealer. It's a sheen, super sheen they call it by Tandy. And it doesn't make it real shiny or anything, but it takes about 10 minutes for it to dry. I gotta do about 3 coats like this. This kind of brings the color out nicer too. I love that mahogany color. I don't know. Another one is British tan. That's another nice color. Quite a bit lighter than this, but it is pretty stuff. It'll take about 10 minutes or so for it to dry. Where Scrimshaw came from the whaling ships. It's one of the few art forms that Americans take credit for, Scrimshaw. On the whaling ships, these guys were out there sometimes 2-3 years, and they had a lot of time to spend and idle hands and stuff. So they got whale's teeth, and they started scratching pictures of the loved ones back home and other things that they knew of, and they used different berry juices to color them. And I primarily just use black, but I have done stuff with color. I've done birds, cardinals. That was all done in color. I'll take and draw out what I want to do first with a pencil. And then I go ahead and I use a tool. And this one here is one that I made. Actually, I sharpen this with a 30 power glass. And anyway, I can put it in there and I can look at it. And I can see, boy, I tell you, you think it's sharp now, but when you do it by hand, you think you got it sharp. And you look at under 30 power and you see how dull it really is. But this thing is really extremely sharp. And what you do is you draw your picture and then you go ahead and you scratch it in there. You see how sharp that tool is. Made a scratch in my thumbnail. Now if I take and rub ink into that, it's an Indian ink, permanent ink. You wipe it off, see the ink stayed in the scratch. And you could scratch various depths, for shading or do cross hatching for shading. Where the name Scrimshaw comes from, nobody really knows. But what the word Scrimshaw, what it means is wasting time. That's what Scrimshaw means. So you see I wasted a lot of time here. Yeah. Had fun doing it though. Like you say, it's not the only way to make a knife, but by golly gee, it's the Uber way. What I'm doing is I'm bringing it down with 320 grit, and I'm putting the edge on her. And being that the blade is thin, I'm not going to bring it back too much. I'm not going to cut way back on the blade. It's starting to get there now. Yeah, now I'm going to go to 400 grit. now buff the edge a little bit. It's a hard wheel with a kind of an aggressive compound. My dad told me years ago, he said, you want to see if a knife's sharp, he says, you hold your fingernail about on a 45-degree angle, and if it sticks, it's sharp. And then another thing too he showed me was that if you want to see if there's any nicks in the blade at all left, you take and you just run run it on your thumbnail. If there's any nicks in there whatsoever, you're going to feel it. Now there is a spot right there. It's not nick, but the edge is rough. So I'm going to work on that just a little bit. That does work. Yeah, this stuff here, it's called Mother. It's a good wax, car wax, and it works really good for knife blades. It's all done.
Well, that's it for tonight. If you'd like to keep tabs on what's coming up on Discovering or see where we've been, you can join us on Facebook or go to 906outdoors.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week right here on Discovering.